Let me ask you a few questions. How many of you have met a celebrity? Now, how many of you went to school with one? Maybe you were in high school or in college with a future pro athlete, an actor, or a musician. This comic artist I'm going to talk to you today about was friends with someone who would go down infamously in history, not for hitting three-pointers or starring in blockbuster films, but for something more sinister. This comic artist's name is Derf, and he was friends with Jeffrey Dahmer.
This is the opening scene of the book, and let me deconstruct this scene a little for you so you can get an idea of what I'm talking about and how I think as I compose a page. Believe it or not, it's just not sitting down and drawing. So we start with this long opening shot. It's this helicopter shot, almost like out of a film, over this rolling countryside, this quiet road in Bath, Ohio. We all know where it is. And I always like to introduce a couple themes right from the get-go, and the two that I'm working in right here are, first of all, the setting itself, Bath, with these neat farms and tidy lawns and quiet country roads. But I noted the contrast between that and between Dahmer himself. What's going on? This kid is just rotting in this bucolic setting, and I was really struck by that. And the other theme, of course, is isolation. We have this kid walking by himself down the side of the road, and this is a major theme in Jeff's life and a major theme in the book as well.
John Backderf, professionally known as Derf Backderf, grew up in Richfield, Ohio. He attended Eastview Junior High and Revere High School. After high school, he spent 6 months at the Art Institute of Pittsburgh, then eventually dropped out and became a garbage man back in his hometown. This time as a garbage man inspired his book Trashed, which is a great graphic novel about his time as a trash man, as well as it gives us insight into how much trash we in America produce and what happens or doesn't happen to our trash after it's picked up by our local sanitation people.
Well, that's easy. I was a garbage man. I mean, I got a great book out of it, but it was horrible. It was hot, it was cold, did it in the rain. I dropped out of college, and it was the only job I could find. We were paid like shit.
After being trash man, Derf eventually was able to get into working on weekly comic strips. First, starting out as being the colorist for a lot of people's syndicated works, eventually getting his own syndicated comic strip called The City.
I love it.
I was hand coloring the Daily Comics page. That was my in, while also doing like political cartoons. But to justify my hire, they had to come up with something that was actually useful.
Derf worked on The City from the 1990s to 2014. During this time, he worked on a few graphic novels. As I mentioned before, he worked on Trash. He also worked on the graphic novel Punk Rock and Trailer Parks, which is a comic about the punk rock scene heyday in Akron, Ohio. It's a great and funny graphic novel. What Derf is best known for is his graphic novel, My Friend Dahmer. I first heard of this comic because of the 2017 movie adaptation. The trailer really intrigued me, especially because it had the Disney star aspect with Alex Ross in it. After doing a little Googling, I found out the movie was based off of a comic, which intrigued me way more than the movie did. I quickly got a copy of the book and I was glued. I'm not a serial killer fanboy or lover. I could care less about that slasher stuff or that daytime horror, real life, slice of life stuff that comes on Hulu and Netflix that your girlfriend or your mom might like watching. What really kept my attention was the fact that Derf actually went to school and was an actual friend of Jeffrey Dahmer's.
Killed 17 people, did horrible things. I was friends with him in high school. Just a weird guy that I knew. What I hear from people a lot is I knew somebody just like Dahmer when I was in school.
What are the odds of that happening? Of someone being friends and growing up with this future serial killer and then being a comic book artist to tell the story about being around that guy before he snapped. And that's really what this comic is. It is a prelude to what was to come with Dahmer. Derf first got the idea of My Friend of Dahmer shortly after the news broke of who and what Jeffrey Dahmer really was. Derf and a couple of his old high school buddies got together and shared stories and experiences they had with Dahmer. After hearing the news of Dahmer, the things that Derf witnessed from Dahmer in his childhood started to make sense.
Fragments. And we sat there in his house and shared stories about our friend, who at that time we hadn't seen in 13 years since high school graduation. After high school, he just vanished, dropped off the face of the earth. Even though he was still in the area off and on, no one ever saw him, none of us. Now, there was a very valid reason for that. He had already killed. But we didn't know that, of course. So we sat there in his family room, sharing stories. Suddenly we had clarity and we realized, my God, that's what he was thinking when he was doing these things. So I had a sketchbook I kept with me, and I pulled it out and just started making some notes and making some sketches. And a little light flickered off in the back of my head, and I thought, wow, this is an incredible story. This is not really a story that people are telling, not the way that I could tell it, from the perspective of a friend, a first-hand account. I should do something with this.
In 1997, he published a short Dahmer story in the 00 number 18 anthology from Fantagraphics. Derf wanted a full-length book out there, soliciting to many publishers, but no one wanted to touch the subject matter that was correlated with Jeffrey Dahmer. So eventually, Derf self-published a 24-page comic in 2002, but wasn't satisfied with the result. Derf knew that he had more to give and a story to tell, so throughout the years, he collected more and more information, not just from other classmates, but through interviews that Dahmer had done and from some FBI files that became public after Jeffrey Dahmer's death. 20 years of background research, Derf drafted a full manuscript in 2 weeks, and publishers became interested in the story of My Friend Dahmer. The final full-length book was published by Abram Books in 2012. Now, you might be thinking, it's sick to try and profit off of this serial killer, that these people like Netflix and whatnot are horrible for glorifying Dahmer and his ungodly acts. And yes, I do agree, especially since the families of Jeffrey Dahmer's victims are all well and alive today. Although, I got to say, this graphic novel is a little different than those scandalous money grabs of movies and TV shows that have came out in the past years. Because this book is mainly about Derf and his classmates who had first-hand experience with Dahmer. In many interviews, he says he has no interest in Dahmer the serial killer, and he has no remorse for Jeffrey Dahmer. In the graphic novel, Derf illustrates his relationship with Dahmer back in high school. In my perspective, Derf wasn't really friends with Jeffrey. Derf and his friends more saw Jeffrey as a lolcow or a crash dummy. Someone they would tell to go do goofy shit, and Jeffrey would do it just because it seemed like he wanted the attention of those people. Derf and his buddies would even pay Dahmer to act out, even faking epileptic seizures in school and in the mall, and pretending to have cerebral palsy just to get a laugh out of it.
He amused us because he was a funny guy and it was bizarre behavior, but we pulled him into our circle for a while, a small group of band nerds that were my inner circle. And we pulled him into our social net, and he, for a while, became part of our group. And then at a certain point, we pushed him away. And, pretty blunt about that in the book.
The comic also shows Jeffrey Dahmer's drinking issues and his disturbing fascination with roadkill. In the beginning of the comic, it shows that Dahmer had a shack where he would put dead animals in jars of acids just so he could see them decay. Derf wrote this book more as a cautionary tale of what happens when adults don't pay attention to children in need.
My Friend Dahmer is a cautionary tale. I don't know if there are any lessons there. If they are, we're obviously not learning them or refuse to learn them. But that was how I approached it, and it's only become, more relevant, but it's still relevant. And I think that's why people keep coming back to the work. I don't know if you'd call it a moral. Vigilance, that's the main. If there's a lesson at all, that would be the one. Just pay attention, especially the adults.
Not just as some cash grab or to hop on the serial killer wave. Derf even says that he didn't want to become part of the scandal scene of Dahmer. He didn't want to put out a reckless encapsulation of Jeffrey Dahmer and what he was like in high school. That's why he did so much research. He did the 20 years of research. He wanted to make sure he put out the best and most accurate depiction of Jeffrey and what he saw of him growing up. You could say he was sympathetic. You could say he was something in that vein. To a degree, the narration in this story does lean to that, but he also doesn't put the onus on Jeffrey's actions as a serial killer on anybody else but Jeffrey, because at the end of the day, it was Jeffrey who killed those people. It was nobody else that was controlling him at that time.
I didn't want to be part of any of the kind of scandal headlines that were revolving around this guy through his capture, trial, and death.
Derf truly believes if an adult would have paid some more attention to Dahmer and noticed his troubled ways, things would have turned out differently. He also admits that him and his friends' treatment of Dahmer may have played a role into the downward spiral of Jeffrey. The comic was nominated and won a bunch of awards. The movie adaptation was also rated pretty high by critics as well. I personally enjoyed both the movie and the comics. All in all, I still think that it is a crazy coincidence that Dahmer and Derf ended up growing up together. Though Jeffrey Dahmer is 100% more popular than Derf Back Derf and has had many comics made about him and for him, My Friend Dahmer is different and mainly a first-hand POV and amazingly crafted piece of literature.
That's My Friend with Dahmer. As I was like researching this book and like everything kind of about it, I always came around to this question to myself: what are the ethics of producing this type of work? You know, of talking about someone who is infamous for something that is so nasty and evil, right? Like, is it okay like to do this? You know, because I remember the Netflix show that came out got so much backlash because it went so viral. I mean, it was a great show. I started watching it. I just binged it the whole way through. You know, I couldn't stop watching it. But once I realized the time frame, because for some reason I thought that the Jeffrey Dahmer killings and all that stuff was done in the 60s or 50s, just kind of like, you know, Ted Bundy and all that stuff. But this was done in the late 90s, you know? Obviously, these families of these victims are still alive. They were able to watch the show and really, you know, see what was going on. And, you know, all this virality behind it. And it was really weird. And, you know, the Netflix got a lot of backlash for the show. It's like, what are the ethics behind this type of deal? You know, is it wrong for Derf to make a story about Dahmer, which leans more into the sympathetic of Dahmer and kind of humanizing him in a way, but not like truly making him out to be a victim of sorts, right? Like when I was looking at interviews, a lot of interviews, Derf says like he does not care about the serial killer Dahmer. He does not sympathize with him. He says, yes, adults should have intervened, but he also says that Jeffrey could have did something different. You know, in later interviews that are, you know, more recent interviews, he says that, you know, maybe that was just Dahmer's destiny and there was nobody that could have stopped him, right? This was just his trajectory in life. So I was just really worried because this is Derf's story, you know what I'm saying? Him and his friends, you know, it wasn't like he was really talking about anything grotesque in the story outside of like these roadkill things that Jeffrey was doing while he was in high school. There's no embellishment on like Jeffrey's urges to kill or do all this crazy stuff. It's more just Jeffrey being this awkward guy in school and them kind of just like fucking with him and using him to get laughs out of, and then that was kind of it. And Derf and his friends is kind of slowly picking up on the like weird and outlandish antics of Dahmer and his drinking habits and all those other things, you know, because Derf also says in a lot of interviews that kids will pick up on a lot of things that adults won't because the kids are around and their minds are more free because they're not thinking about bills or work or, you know, relationship stuff. They're more just thinking about what's going on around their, you know, at school and stuff like that. So it's just an interesting story because in my perspective, I don't think that it was a malicious take on the Dahmer story. It didn't glorify anything, or Derf, you know, and his friends were super taken aback once they realized that Dahmer became a serial killer once it was revealed. Let me know what you guys think. Like, what are the ethics of creating a divisive story like this that really hinders, it hits on the real life? You know what I'm saying? Like, is it wrong for somebody to make a story about like the Holocaust, right? Or American slavery or of like things like that? Because like, I don't know, you know what I'm saying? Like, is that, I mean, especially if it's a person's first account with that person or with that event, I don't know, you know. Like, I'm wondering, so like comment below what you guys think of the ethics are of making a story like this. I don't see a problem with the comic personally. I'm sure there's people out there who do, just like with anything else that comes out when people make serial killer fodder and stuff like that glorify like these, you know, true crime stories and stuff. So, you know, I don't know, who knows. But also, I am a comic book creator. I make my own comics. You can read all my comics in the link in the description of the video. I have stickers that are out if you want to go check them out. They're high quality vinyl stickers. They're a Shonen Jump inspired cover sticker with my characters from my series that you can read on my website. I also am done with the first half of my fan webcomics, Nobody's Safe, a Spider-Man story. I'm going to roll out the book in about 2-3 weeks. I'm going to post 2 pages a week on my community tab, on the YouTube page, and also on my website. But I will upload the full linked comic on my website for $2. You can read it, the full length comic, for $2. It'll be the first part, so it'll be like 26, 28 pages long, and then I will probably have the rest of the second part of the book done by end of June, early July, and I'll have the full thing up on my website. Again, only $2 if you want to go read it, you know, get a head start and don't want to wait. If not, 2 pages a week, 2 pages on my website, 2 pages on the YouTube community tab. Sign up for my newsletter, all that good stuff. I appreciate you guys for watching. I appreciate all the new subscribers and all the views I've been getting on my last couple videos. I highly appreciate it. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good shit. See you guys in the next one. Peace.